Yesterday, federal judges with the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the state of Missouri can sue China for unlawful actions during the COVID pandemic, including the hoarding of personal protective equipment. Now, any lawsuit moving forward, according to the judges, must prove that China leveraged the world's ignorance about COVID-19 by manipulating the world PPE market. The worldwide PPE market. Joining me now to discuss this is Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. General Bailey, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me on.
So let me get your reaction. A favorable decision for the state of Missouri, in part by the court yesterday.
Absolutely. This is an important first step in holding the Chinese Communist Party responsible for inflicting such disaster as this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, on the people of the United States and specifically on the people of the state of Missouri. We know that they had cornered the market on certain supplies necessary to respond to the pandemic and then hoarded those supplies and deprived the American public and policymakers at the state level from access to those goods. So it's like they've created a demand and then control the supply. I mean, these are central tenets of the communist economic philosophy, and certainly they were exercised to the detriment of Missourians, and there was a death toll associated with it. So we're going to fight to hold the Chinese Communist Party responsible.
Now, this is not easy to do because of federal law. The Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act really protects foreign actors from lawsuits from here in the United States. So how do you see this going forward, and what could be the action? How could we recoup any money from China?
Well, we're going to go back to the district court and put on the evidence we have. We're continuing to put that together now, and we're going to make the case. I mean, look, again, we know that they hoarded PPE supplies that were absolutely necessary in the government's response to the pandemic, and American lives were lost in the process. And so holding them accountable is important. I think the way we do that is by identifying assets that the Chinese Communist Party possesses here in the United States and specifically in Missouri. And those could be targets for asset forfeiture once we get a judgment favorable to the state and adverse to the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, they have a lot of assets here in the United States. It seems to be increasing even as they buy up farmland, manufacturing, and other things. So it shouldn't be too hard to find something owned by the Chinese Communist Party that's here in the United States. I want to switch gears because you testified on Capitol Hill yesterday in the Homeland Security Committee's impeachment hearing of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. And I actually want to play a clip of that. Play clip number 3.
The southern border is absolutely not secure, and this is far beyond a crisis at this point.
Similarly, it is not secure, and we have a crisis.
General Bailey?
The border is not secure in the crisis of historically epic proportion.
That was a question that you, along with some of your attorneys general from other states, addressed from Michael Guest. What was your reaction to the hearing yesterday? Do you think the message was delivered that this border crisis on the southern border is impacting the entire nation?
Yeah, Tony, I think that's right. I think that I'm amazed that the debate has shifted. Even the Democrats now concede that Secretary Mayorkas has created a disaster at our southern border of epic proportion by refusing to enforce the laws as written, refusing to use the tools at his disposal to reduce illegal border crossings. And it's turned every state into a border state, certainly has made Missouri less safe. We know that more than 1,500 people died in 1 year from fentanyl overdoses, fentanyl that flooded across the southern border. We know that 43 children, innocent victims, were killed due to accidental exposure to fentanyl because of the porous southern border. We know that Missouri is now the 4th most frequent state for human trafficking. And these are deplorable conditions that are completely the making of Secretary Mayorkas's failed policies at the southern border. Glad to see Congress is going to hold him accountable and is moving in that direction.
You are confident, based upon your statements, that his lack of leadership, his failures, has risen to the level of demanding an impeachment.
That's absolutely right. And again, it amazed me that the debate has shifted. Even the Democrats will concede that there's an enormous problem here, and it's wreaking havoc on communities across the United States of America. So the question is no longer whether or not the border is secure. The question now is what do we do about it? And I think our entire justice system lacks credibility if we're not willing to enforce the laws as written. Certainly, Secretary Mayorkas is not enforcing the laws at the southern border, but there is a law, an impeachment process available to hold him accountable. And that'll restore some modicum of credibility to the system. And I would also point out that, really the central question before the House committee at this point is, does Secretary Mayorkas' behavior rise to the level of an impeachable offense? And I would point out that under the English common law that was well understood by the founders at the time of the framing of the United States Constitution, a complete abdication of a public official's duties and responsibilities constituted a high crime and misdemeanor. And that's what we see along the southern border from Secretary Mayorkas, is a complete abdication of his both moral and legal responsibilities to protect the American people.
Well, General, I mean, it's obvious he's just carrying out the wishes of his boss. I mean, he works for the President of the United States.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we see that case in point in his refusal to build the border wall. Within the first week of President Biden taking office, he issued an executive order saying he was not going to build a border wall. Now, that's after, in 2006, as a senator, he voted for the Secure Fences Act. So he conceded in his vote that barriers work along the border, but then issued an executive order contrary to that previous position. And the problem was that the fiscal year 2020 budget required Secretary Mayorkas to build additional border walls. We've had to sue him because he refuses to do that. If he wasn't going to carry out the laws and couldn't figure out how to reconcile his boss's position with his legal obligation, then he shouldn't have taken the job in the first place.
Well, bottom line, this comes down to elections have consequences. Either you have people who will uphold the law, abide by it, or those who ignore it and try to tear it down. General Bailey, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. All the best to you.